historians. This is Wendy with AP History Help, and this is the AP History Help podcast, where you will learn everything you need to know about taking AP history classes, from skills to content, from historical thinking skills to themes in history. Whether you're taking or thinking about taking AP World History, AP US History, or AP European History, this podcast is for you. Be sure to check out the episode list and show notes to find the topics that you need help with. Email me at wendy@aphistoryhelp.com with questions that I might answer on future episodes. You can also follow and interact with me on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube at AP History Help. This week, I am going to give you my inside expert advice on answering stimulus-based multiple choice questions. Essentially, the type of questions that are on the AP exam that you're going to take in May. Having a strategy is the key to answering 55 questions in 55 minutes and getting a passing score. Today, we will talk about strategy, not the content. And just like all the other episodes so far, it applies to all of you, AP World, APUSH, and AP Euro. But first, if you listened to the last episode of AP History Help, episode 7, you heard me talk about a whole bunch of acronyms that are used in AP History courses. I realized after the fact, in my introduction, I used the acronym FRQ, but never explained it. I do apologize to all of you who messaged me to point that out. I was just checking to see who was listening. How many times has a teacher told you that when you pointed out a mistake? Classic teacher cover-up. But seriously, we don't claim to be perfect, though many students think we are. Thank you. I'm thankful for the students who are paying attention with a critical ear. It's a great life skill to have. Anyway, FRQ stands for Free Response Question and is the blanket term for the questions that have written answers, as compared to the multiple choice questions. If you missed the last episode, and there are acronyms that you're curious about, be sure to go back and give episode 7 a listen. Now for this week's show. The AP History exam in May has 55 multiple choice questions for which you have 55 minutes to answer. That ends up being 1 minute per question. This is the first part of the test and one of 2 parts in section 1. The next 3 episodes will deal with the other part of Section 1 as well as the 2 parts of Section 2. Altogether, the multiple choice portion, Section 1, Part 1, is worth 40% of your overall grade, more than any other part of the test. Being prepared to answer these questions is important, and there is strategy to it because this is not you memorize facts, get questions right kind of multiple choice. No, not at all. And the best way to do well on the MCQs is practice. And don't just practice attempting to answer sample questions. Practice with feedback, whether it's just the answer key or the answers with feedback. Or get a tutor who can help you reason out the questions you struggle with. By the way, I do this, and I have access to over 900 sample questions, at least for AP World. For every lesson or unit, do as many as possible. I can't promise you'll get 100% on the exam. But the more repetition you have, the more comfortable you will feel. And in the end, the better you'll do. The multiple choice questions typically appear in sets of 3 or 4 questions, each with 1 or more stimuli. And by stimuli, that means they can be based off of primary or secondary texts, images, including artwork, photos, cartoons, charts, graphs, maps. Also, there will be at least 1 set of questions based on multiple stimuli, like 2 text passages, or a picture and a text that requires you to compare them on some level. Now, these types of stimulus-based questions require analysis of the sources and the use of historical thinking skills and processes to understand the historical development. Going back to what I said before, you really need to expose yourself to as many of these types of questions as possible. Hopefully, they are the types of questions on your tests in classes. But if not, get a good review book that has a lot of practice questions. I talked about that in episode 3. Or if you're taking AP World, like I said, I might know someone who can help you with that, or who sells practice questions by the unit. I'll put the link to that in the show notes. Do you need to know facts to do well on the MCQs? Yes, definitely. Some of the questions end up having little to nothing to do with the stimuli other than same place or time or topic. But you don't actually need the passage or the map to be able to answer the question. You have to figure out what they're asking and synthesize the information around it, coupled with what is in your head to be able to answer the questions. For example, there was a passage written by Marco Polo about the trading city of Hangzhou, and one of the questions asked, which of the following would most likely have been purchased by someone traveling there? Well, of all the choices given, there was only one obvious choice, given that it was in China, that being tea, porcelain, and silk. That's a 95 to 99 straight up knowledge question. And probably 95% of test takers got that right. I promise you, most questions are much more challenging than that. And learning how to use your head coupled with your ability to analyze and synthesize the document or chart or graph or whatever is the key to doing well on the MCQ, which remember is 40% of your overall grade on the exam. Now it's time for Wendy Teaches History. I'm going to cover this next topic as factually as possible, which is how teachers should teach anything. We shouldn't bring any personal biases into our lessons, and trust me, it is quite challenging sometimes. But seriously, my job is to help you determine what the facts are, to develop the historical thinking skills and processes needed to arrive at your own conclusions. And this is not current events. This is the history of the Arab-Israeli conflict. And keep in mind, this is a short segment of the podcast. There are many more details and events and groups of people who I am leaving out. I recommend, if you find yourself going down the rabbit hole of learning more, that you find non-biased sources or at least both sides of the conflict. The Arab-Israeli conflict is a complex and long-standing dispute over land, identity, and sovereignty or independence in the Middle East. It primarily centers around the establishment of the State of Israel in 1948 and its subsequent conflicts with neighboring Arab states and Palestinian communities. In the late 19th and early 20th century, Jewish immigrants began moving to Palestine, which was then part of the Ottoman Empire, wanting to establish a Jewish homeland. This movement, known as Zionism, gained momentum, especially after World War I, when the League of Nations gave Britain permission or a mandate to govern Palestine. Tensions escalated as Jewish immigration increased, leading to clashes between the Jewish and the Arab communities. So in 1947, the United Nations proposed a plan to partition Palestine into separate Jewish and Arab states, with Jerusalem as an international city. While Jewish leaders accepted the plan, Arab leaders rejected it, leading to the First Arab-Israeli War in 1948. The war resulted in the establishment of the State of Israel. but also displaced hundreds of thousands of Palestinians, creating a refugee crisis. Over the years, subsequent conflicts, including the Suez Crisis in 1956, the Six-Day War in 1967, and the Yom Kippur War in 1973, further strained relations between Israel and its Arab neighbors. The Palestinian Liberation Organization, the PLO, emerged as a prominent advocate for Palestinian rights, seeking self-determination and an independent state. Negotiations and peace processes have occurred from time to time with significant milestones, including the Oslo Accords in the 1990s and the Camp David Summit in 2000. The conflict remains unresolved, with key issues including the status of Jerusalem, the rights of the Palestinian refugees, and the borders of a potential Palestinian state. Efforts for a two-state solution where Israel and Palestine coexist side by side continue, but face significant challenges. Both Israelis and Palestinians have legitimate historical and cultural claims to the land, making a resolution a complex and sensitive endeavor. The group known as Hamas is an Islamic political and military organization that governs the Gaza Strip in Israel. And on October 7th, a Jewish holiday, Hamas soldiers stormed from the Gaza Strip into neighboring Israeli towns in a surprise attack. Israel responded by launching airstrikes into Gaza, and the conflict continues. There you have it. Some history that informs current events that have an impact throughout the world right now. In the next segment, I want to speak about your strategy in answering the different types of stimulus-based multiple choice questions. Okay, so the proctor says you may begin, and you open your test book to section 1, part 1, and there it is. A big old passage to read, followed by 3 to 4 questions. Don't do it. Do not read the passage first. Skim it very briefly. Let your eyes glance off the words. Notice any words that jump out at you, and then let those eyes fall on the source line of the document. Who wrote it? When? Where? To whom? Brainstorm on it a little bit. What do you know about it? Jot down quick thoughts in the margins. Then, don't go back to that document yet. Read all of the questions and answer choices. There's a really good chance that you are going to be able to narrow down those answer choices and or figure out the correct answer before even reading the document. Circle, underline, make notes. Only after you've read the questions and answers do I want you to go back to the text. You should have a pretty good idea of what you're looking for now. And don't spend too much time stressing over any question. Remember, if it is 3 questions and a passage, you should only spend about 3 minutes on that question set. If you are not pretty sure of the right answer, make an educated guess, mark it lightly, and come back to it only if you have time at the end. You don't want to run the risk that you're going to be rushed at the end of the test and end up missing out on a few easier questions around number 54 and 55. Also, let me be clear. There are some questions that you are not going to like any of the answer choices. And you're not going to like that you don't feel good about your answer. It's going to happen. On average, you only need to get 50% of these questions right if you are shooting for a 3 on this exam. For the picture-based questions, make sure you read the title and any captions first and again. Who created it, when, where, for whom, brainstorm on it. What do you know about it? Jot down quick thoughts in the margin, then go ahead and read the questions and answers. Just so you know, these kind of questions are not easier. Yeah, no reading to do, but usually the questions and answers are 99% from the knowledge in your head. Maps, charts, graphs, these give you a lot of information in them. Do I need to say it? Who created it? When? Where? For whom? What is the title? Brainstorm on it. What do you know about it? Jot down quick thoughts in the margin. Yeah, but do make sure you really interpret the data and soak it in. But also jump into those questions and let them guide you in terms of what you're looking for. There's a good chance that one of those questions will end up having nothing to do with the chart or the map, except that it's the same topic or time period, or it might be what period immediately followed or preceded the events depicted. The point being, answering the MCQ is a lovely mix of content knowledge, analysis, and deduction skills, and a heap of confidence in your abilities and knowledge. And you know what's going to help you get your confidence in peak performance mode for the test? Practice. Do you want someone to practice with? That's something that I do for many of the students that I coach and tutor for the AP courses. So get in touch with me. We can meet online for as little as 30 minutes or as much as an hour. The time to practice is now. If you wait much longer, it's too late. Join me next episode when I talk to you about how to ace the SAQ, or short answer questions, on the exam. There is a formula that I teased last week using the VET acronym. I'll go into more detail on the different types of SAQs, as well as how to apply the formula to ensure maximum return on your efforts. I'll even read some sample responses and point out why points were or were not earned. Do be sure to listen to that episode and more. If you haven't done it already, hit that follow or subscribe button so you'll be notified whenever a new episode airs. And do me a favor, email me at wendy@aphistoryhelp.com. If you have any questions or suggestions, or just to tell me you listened or that you watched the show, or if you're needing an MCQ workout partner. Hey, if you email me and tell me that you listened to this episode, I'll give you 25% off a 30-minute one-on-one tutoring session. That's wendy@aphistoryhelp.com. You could also follow me on Instagram and TikTok at aphistoryhelp. Did you know that this podcast also airs in video form on YouTube? The channel is called The World is Your Classroom. I'll link to it in the show notes. If you subscribe there, you'll get notified every other week when a new episode is uploaded there. Whether it's social media or YouTube, you'll be able to comment, ask questions, and interact with me on there. Tell your friends who are taking or thinking about taking AP History classes about the podcast. I'm here to help as many students as possible to be successful in the course and on the exam. That will do it for this episode. Don't forget to come to Wendy for AP History Help. This episode of the AP History Help podcast is now